growing concerns from House Majority Leader Eric Cantor about what he's calling President Obama's power grab after changes he made using executive actions to the president's health care law and the promises he's made to use that pen, not the fen, the pen and the phone, I was trying to say, during the State of the Union speech to get things done that Congress will not move forward on. In a memo to House Republicans on regulations and executive power, Cantor, using very strong language, says President Obama's abuses constitute, quote, an imperial presidency. Let's bring in Rebecca Berg, political correspondent for the Washington Examiner. Thanks for joining us on Saturday.
Thanks for having me, Ed. Good to see you.
Good to see you. I want to play a clip from the 2008 campaign. Some people may have forgotten, but here's what candidate Obama promised.
This is part of the whole theory of George Bush, that he can make laws as he's going along. I disagree with that. I taught the Constitution for 10 years. I believe in the Constitution, and I will obey the Constitution of the United States. We're not going to use signing statements as a way of doing an end run around Congress.
Oh, boy, Rebecca, maybe you forgot we had it on tape.
Maybe he forgot. It does sound very familiar, and it should, because this is going to be the Republican attack for the next 8 months. They are going to use the president's words as their most potent weapon against him. And the president has laid out a calendar. The White House has a calendar for the next year, essentially, laying out executive actions. They're ready to go. And so for the next 8 months, we can expect Republicans to be hitting him hard on this.
Now, they've been hitting him hard with rhetoric, but what kind of action are the Republicans doing now? Speaker John Boehner has said various Republican rank-and-file lawmakers are looking at what moves the Republican House might be able to do to stop some of these executive actions. Are they getting anywhere, or is this just talk?
What you're going to see from the Republican House is a number of bills addressing this issue. Also, you can expect some GOP oversight hearings, have them bring some administration officials to the Hill for questioning on some of these executive actions. But most of what they're going to be doing is really just symbolic. However, it is a very potent messaging opportunity for Republicans, and for 8 months, they're going to be able to hit the president on this issue and use his administration officials to do it.
Now, we checked another tape of Jay Carney, and it was on Valentine's Day. Jay Carney and I talking on Valentine's together. It wasn't exactly a Valentine. It wasn't romantic, but yeah. Here's what Jay Carney said about these Republican attacks.
There is no question that this president has been judicious in his use of executive action, executive orders. And I think those numbers thus far have come in below what President George W. Bush and President Bill Clinton did. The matter the president was discussing in his campaign in 2008 wasn't the number, it was the quality and the type of executive actions that he believed were not appropriate.
So I got to push you on that, Rebecca. What he's saying was the quality was, in his words, that there were executive actions George W. Bush did involving the war on terror that the President Obama, when he came in his first weeks and months in office, did overturn. And we checked the numbers, and President Bush had far more executive actions than President Obama has. He's got a few more years, so the numbers are going to come up, we can bet. But on that point, I got to push you. Republican presidents have used his power more than President Obama did. What do you say to that?
They have, and that's absolutely the argument that the White House is going to continue making. But what they have to be careful of is overreach with these executive actions, and that was the criticism that candidate Obama was making of President Bush. So they have to walk a very fine line here, because on the one hand, this is the president fighting not only Republicans and Congress, but also fighting his image now as a lame duck president. So he wants to use these executive actions to do as much as he possibly can. But on the other hand, if he goes too far, if he overreaches, Republicans are going to criticize him. The public might criticize him for it. And so it's a very fine line that he has to walk. It's potentially risky for him, but it's a risk that the White House has to take at this point because they're hamstrung, they're frustrated, and they have no other options.
Right, and they also realize, though, there are limits when you do some of these executive actions. On one hand, Republicans will say, these are crazy, they're too much, they're overreach. But on the other hand, one of the executive orders the president did is actually kind of weak. It's about the raising minimum wage for federal contract workers. A lot of people don't know the fine print. It doesn't actually take effect until 2015. So while it may seem like out of control, and some of these moves are actually kind of wimpy.
Some of them are, to use your word, kind of wimpy. You can't do a whole lot with most executive actions.
Limits,
and
yeah.
some of the more extreme executive actions that could be taken. For example, stopping deportations of illegal immigrants, which is something a lot of progressives want the president to do because Congress won't be tackling immigration reform likely this year. Some of those would give him a pushback from the public and a pushback from Republicans. So, you know, the wimpy ones are the safer ones, but then he still looks like a lame duck president. So it doesn't really solve the problem.
You make a great point. There are limits to some of these executive actions because they don't have the full force of law behind them. Rebecca Berg, some great insight. We appreciate you coming in. Hope you come back.
Thank you, Ed. Me too.
Good to see you. Have a good weekend.
Good to